Welcome back, everyone. If you're enjoying these stories, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming tales. Today, we're diving into a captivating story that explores the ultimate sacrifice for love and family. A story that begins with a desperate choice and ends with an unexpected emotional unraveling. This is the tale of a woman who married the Mafia boss to save her family, but ended up losing her heart. My name is Isabella Rossi, and I carry the weight of my family's name like a shroud woven with threads of honor and crippling debt. The Rossi name, once synonymous with exquisite Italian pastries and a warmth that could melt the coldest winter, had become a whisper of impending ruin. Our beloved bakery Il Forno della Nonna, a cornerstone of the community for 3 generations, was teetering on the precipice of foreclosure. The culprit? A series of unfortunate investments by my well-meaning but utterly naive father, coupled with a sudden downturn in the local economy. We owed a substantial sum to the bank, a sum that felt as insurmountable as the Alps, and a far more menacing, undisclosed debt to a man whose name was only ever uttered in hushed tones. Angelo the Serpent Moretti. Angelo Moretti wasn't just a name, he was a force of nature. A shadow that stretched across the city's underbelly, reaching into every corner, every illicit deal, every whisper of power. His empire was built on intimidation, cunning, and a ruthless efficiency that left no room for sentimentality or weakness. My father, in a moment of sheer, blind desperation, had borrowed from Moretti to cover one of his spectacularly failing ventures, promising a return he could never hope to deliver in 1,000 lifetimes. Now, the deadline loomed. A monstrous clock ticking down to the precise moment Moretti would claim not just our historic bakery, our family legacy, but potentially our very lives, leaving us destitute and vulnerable to his terrifying whims. I was 24 years old with vibrant, ambitious dreams of attending a prestigious culinary school in Paris, of perfecting the delicate, intricate art of patisserie, of creating edible masterpieces that would bring joy to the world. But those dreams, once so vivid and tangible, had evaporated like steam from a hot espresso on a cold morning, replaced by the grim reality of our impending doom. My younger sister, Sophia, still in high school, was blissfully unaware of the true gravity of our situation, her world still painted in the bright, carefree colors of youth, untouched by the looming darkness. My mother, bless her fragile, gentle heart, was slowly but surely wasting away under the constant, relentless stress, her once vibrant spirit dimmed, almost extinguished, by the ceaseless worry that gnawed at her soul. I remember the day Moretti's primary enforcer, a hulking, silent man named Dante with eyes like chips of polished granite that seemed to pierce through you, first visited our bakery. The sweet, comforting scent of fresh bread, of warm, sugary cannoli suddenly felt heavy, tainted, suffocating. He didn't speak much, merely handed my father a pristine white envelope with Moretti's distinctive, ominous black wax seal. My father's face went ashen as he read the contents, his hands trembling uncontrollably. That evening, he finally confessed the true, terrifying extent of our predicament. The bank loan was one thing, a manageable, albeit difficult, burden. But Moretti's debt, it was a death sentence, a bottomless pit from which there was no escape. "There's no way out, Isabella," he whispered, his voice cracking, thick with unshed tears, his eyes brimming with a despair so profound it broke my heart. "He wants the bakery, everything. He wants to make a chilling example of me, to show everyone what happens when you cross Angelo Moretti." I couldn't stand by and watch my family crumble, their spirits shattered, their lives destroyed. The thought of losing our home, our ancestral legacy, everything we held dear, was utterly unbearable, a pain that gnawed at my very core. I spent countless sleepless nights pacing my small bedroom, the city lights outside my window offering no solace, only a stark, indifferent reminder of the cold, unfeeling world beyond our fragile walls. I researched tirelessly. I called every lawyer I knew, every contact, grasping at straws. I even considered the desperate, futile act of running away, but where would we go? Moretti's reach was long, insidious, and unforgiving, a web from which there was no escape. Then, an idea, born of pure, unadulterated desperation and a flicker of insane, reckless courage, sparked within me. It was a terrifying, reckless thought, one that made my stomach churn and my hands tremble uncontrollably. But it was the only path I could see, the only glimmer of hope in the overwhelming darkness. I would go to Angelo Moretti himself. I would face the devil, look him directly in the eye, and make him an offer he couldn't refuse. The next morning, fortified by a resolve I didn't know I possessed, a fierce determination born of love and fear, I found the address Dante had subtly left for my father. It was a grand, imposing mansion on the sprawling, secluded outskirts of the city, surrounded by high, impenetrable walls and an intricate network of security cameras that seemed to follow my every move, watching, judging. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the suffocating silence of my fear. I pressed the intercom, my voice surprisingly steady as I stated my name, Isabella Rossi. A moment of chilling silence stretched, then the distant, metallic click of the gate, granting me entry into the lion's den. The interior of the mansion was a spectacle of lavish, almost obscenely opulent decor, a stark, jarring contrast to the cozy, worn charm of our humble bakery. Dark, polished wood, rich, heavy tapestries and paintings of questionable taste adorned the walls, exuding an air of intimidating wealth and power. A stoic, unsmiling housekeeper, her face impassive, led me through a maze of grand hallways to a large, imposing study. The air in the room was thick with the distinctive, cloying scent of expensive cigars and the palpable weight of raw, unbridled power. Angelo Moretti sat behind a massive, antique desk, a formidable silhouette against the large, floor-to-ceiling window overlooking manicured gardens that seemed almost too perfect. He was older than I expected, perhaps in his late 40s, with distinguished silver streaks at his temples and eyes that, even from a distance, felt like they could pierce through concrete, through my very soul. He had a reputation for being cold, calculating, a man who saw people as mere pawns in his intricate, dangerous game. I steeled myself, taking a deep, shaky breath. Miss Rossi, his voice was smooth, almost velvety. A dangerous silk that could coil around you before you even knew you were caught in its deceptive embrace. To what do I owe the unexpected pleasure of your visit? I took another deep breath, forcing my voice to be clear and unwavering, though my insides felt like a churning jelly, a maelstrom of fear and resolve. I've come to discuss my father's unfortunate debt. He leaned back in his imposing chair, a slight, enigmatic smirk playing on his lips, as if genuinely amused by my audacity, by my presence in his domain. And what, pray tell, could a young woman like yourself possibly contribute to such a weighty financial discussion? I'm offering a solution, I said, meeting his piercing gaze directly, my voice gaining strength, surprising even myself with my sudden boldness. A different kind of payment, Mr. Moretti. His eyes narrowed and the fleeting amusement faded, replaced by a cold, calculating glint. A dangerous spark. Intriguing. Go on then. Elaborate. I will marry you, I stated, the words tasting like bitter ash in my mouth, yet feeling oddly liberating in their finality, in their desperate commitment. In exchange for my family's complete safety, for the immediate erasure of all their debts, both overt and covert, and for the unwavering guarantee that Il Forno della Nonna will remain ours, untouched, unthreatened. The silence in the room stretched, heavy and suffocating, thick with unspoken possibilities. I watched his face intently, searching for any sign of reaction, any flicker of emotion. But it remained impassive, a mask of unreadable thoughts, an impenetrable fortress. He studied me, his gaze lingering, dissecting, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. A primal chill of fear. It was a terrifying gamble, a desperate, final throw of the dice, but I had no other options. No other path to salvation. I was willing to sacrifice everything, my entire future, my dreams, my very freedom for my family. My heart, my future, my very freedom. I was ready to become the wife of a mafia boss, a pawn in his dangerous, intricate world, if it meant saving theirs from utter destruction. Angelo Moretti's response wasn't immediate, nor was it an outright rejection. He merely steepled his long, elegant fingers, his eyes never leaving mine, a silent, penetrating interrogation that lasted what felt like an eternity, stretching the air taut between us. The cigar smoke curling lazily from the ornate ashtray beside him seemed to mock my audacity, my desperate plea. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, a predatory hum that sent a shiver down my spine. You're a brave girl, Isabella Rossi. Or perhaps a foolish one, depending on how you look at it. Marriage to me is not a simple transaction, a mere exchange of goods. It comes with its own stringent set of expectations, its own uncompromising brand of loyalty. A loyalty that must be absolute. I understand, I replied, my voice surprisingly steady, though my heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs that threatened to betray my carefully constructed composure. My unwavering loyalty will be to you as your devoted wife. My family's absolute safety and security is my only, non-negotiable condition. He considered this, his gaze still fixed on me, searching, assessing, dissecting my every word, my every. And what, pray tell, makes you think I would agree to such an unconventional proposition? I could simply take what I'm owed, every last penny, and your family along with it, if they dare to resist, or even to whisper a word of defiance. Because I offer something you can't simply take by force, I countered, surprising even myself with my sudden, unexpected boldness, with the clarity of my argument. A legitimate, respectable face. A genuine connection to the community, to a world outside your own shadowed empire. I can be a shield, a seamless cover for your operations, a respectable, unblemished front that deflects unwanted attention, that allows you to operate with greater impunity. And I am willing to do whatever is necessary to uphold that image, to maintain that facade, no matter the personal cost. A flicker of something akin to genuine admiration, or perhaps just cold, pragmatic calculation, crossed his otherwise impassive features. A surprising level of pragmatism and a clear understanding of the mechanics of power. For someone so young. Very well. We have a deal, Miss Rossi. He rose from his desk, a tall, imposing figure, his presence filling the room, and walked around to stand directly before me. He reached into his pocket and produced a small, velvet box, dark as midnight. Inside, nestled on a bed of pristine white satin, was a dazzling diamond ring, undeniably expensive, almost blinding in its brilliance, a silent symbol of our unholy pact. Consider this a down payment, a token of our agreement. The wedding will be in 2 weeks. A small, private affair, strictly by invitation. You will inform your family that you are marrying me out of genuine love, that I have swept you off your feet with my charm and devotion. They will never know the true, transactional nature of our arrangement. Understand? My breath hitched in my throat. 2 weeks. It was a whirlwind, a terrifying, irreversible plunge into the unknown, into a life I never imagined. Understood, I managed, my voice barely a whisper, a mere wisp of sound. Returning home, I felt like a ghost walking among the living, a phantom haunting my own life. How could I possibly tell them? How could I explain this sudden, inexplicable marriage to a man notorious for his shadowy dealings? For his ruthless reputation? The light tasted like bitter ash on my tongue, a poison I was forced to swallow. I gathered my parents and Sophia in the living room, their faces etched with worry and confusion. I tried to conjure a convincing smile, a hint of genuine excitement, but it felt like a cruel, elaborate masquerade, a performance designed to deceive the very people I loved most. I have something important to tell you, I began, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to control it. I'm getting married. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth in shock. My father's jaw dropped in disbelief. And Sophia, bless her innocent, romantic heart, looked at me with wide, confused eyes, trying to process the sudden, astounding news. Married? To whom? Isabella? Who is he? Someone we know? To Angelo Moretti, I said, forcing the name out, the syllables heavy with unspoken meaning. A stunned, suffocating silence descended upon the room. My mother's hand remained clamped over her mouth, her eyes widening in a mixture of disbelief and palpable fear. My father, his face paling, finally found his voice, a strangled whisper. Moretti? Isabella, what are you saying? You can't possibly. He's a dangerous man. I love him, Papa, I lied, the words feeling like sharp shards of glass tearing at my throat. He's different when you get to know him, really know him. He's kind and he understands me in a way no one else ever has. And he's offered to help us, to pay off all our crushing debts. He wants to save Il Forno della Nonna, to restore our family's legacy. The desperation in my voice, perhaps, lent my fabricated words a strange, unsettling credibility. My parents, burdened by their own worries, their hope almost extinguished by despair, seemed to grasp onto this impossible lifeline, this miracle sent from above. The idea of a solution, any solution, was a siren song luring them with its promise of peace. They looked at the dazzling ring sparkling on my finger, a tangible symbol of a future they could only dream of, a future free from debt and fear. Sophia, ever the romantic, slowly began to beam, her face alight with childlike excitement. "Oh, Isabella, how absolutely wonderful! He must be so handsome and charming if he's swept you off your feet like this." I smiled, a hollow, painful thing, and pulled her into a tight hug, feeling the full, crushing weight of my lie settle deeper into my soul, becoming a part of me. They didn't know the true extent of the sacrifice I was making, the gilded cage I was willingly stepping into, trading my freedom for their survival. My mother, still hesitant, still wary, her eyes filled with a lingering apprehension, finally conceded, her immense relief warring fiercely with her unspoken fears. My father, with a deep, shuddering sigh of profound gratitude, wrapped me in a tight, emotional embrace. "Thank you, my daughter," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "for saving us from ruin." His words were a balm and a wound all at once, a bittersweet testament to my ultimate sacrifice. The 2 weeks passed in a dizzying blur of preparations, orchestrated entirely by Moretti's meticulous, efficient staff. A wedding dress, chosen for me without any input from myself. A silk gown that felt both exquisitely luxurious and utterly suffocating in its opulence. The small, private ceremony was held in the grand, cavernous ballroom of his mansion, attended by a handful of his closest associates, men with sharp, piercing eyes and even sharper suits, their faces revealing nothing of their inner thoughts or dealings. There were no friends, no other family, just my parents and Sophia. Their presence a bittersweet reminder of the profound, heartbreaking reason I was doing this. As I walked down the aisle, my father's arm around me, offering a shaky support, I caught Moretti's gaze. He stood at the altar, impeccably dressed, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. He looked powerful, unyielding, a force of nature, and utterly devoid of the warmth, the affection I had so carefully fabricated for my family. My heart was a frantic drum, each beat a painful farewell to the freedom, to the dreams I was surrendering. The vows were spoken, the words hollow, echoing in the cavernous room, devoid of genuine emotion. "I, Isabella, take you, Angelo, to be my lawfully wedded husband." Each word was a nail hammered into the coffin of my personal dreams, of my future as I had envisioned it. When he slipped the cold, heavy wedding band onto my finger, it felt like a physical manifestation of the chains I had forged for myself, binding me to him, to his world. The reception was a subdued affair, with polite smiles and murmured congratulations from men whose hands felt like steel, whose eyes held secrets. I played the part of the radiant, joyous bride, my smile fixed in place, my laughter light but utterly empty. I watched my family, their faces alight with a newfound hope they hadn't known in years. And the immense sacrifice felt validated, even if it left a gaping, bleeding wound in my own heart. A wound that might never heal. That night, as I stood in the opulent master bedroom, a room I was now meant to share with a stranger, a man who was both my savior and my captor, the stark reality of my situation truly hit me with full force. I was Mrs. Moretti. I was the wife of a man who controlled the shadows of the city, a man who had bought me, body and soul, to serve his own dangerous purposes. The gilded cage was indeed beautiful, its bars adorned with gold, but it was a cage nonetheless, a prison of my own making. I was no longer Isabella Rossi, the aspiring pastry chef with dreams of Paris. I was Isabella Moretti, a pawn in a dangerous, deadly game, and the game had just irrevocably begun. The initial days of my marriage to Angelo Moretti were a surreal blur, a constant, exhausting performance for an invisible, discerning audience. Our home was a magnificent fortress of opulent silence, broken only by the hushed movements of the efficient, almost ghost-like staff. Angelo was a man of precise routines, of meticulous schedules and carefully curated public appearances, every detail precisely orchestrated. He spent his mornings closeted in his immense study, conducting business I dared not inquire about, emerging only for breakfast, a formal, almost ritualistic affair where conversation was sparse and strained, an exercise in polite restraint. His eyes, though often unreadable, held a sharp, calculating intelligence, a constant assessment that made me feel perpetually under scrutiny, like a specimen under a microscope. My role was unequivocally clear: the elegant, respectable wife. The perfect complement to his formidable presence. I accompanied him to various social functions, glittering charity galas, exclusive art exhibitions, high-stakes political fundraisers, events where his presence was both undeniable and subtly intimidating, casting a long shadow. I smiled, I charmed, I made polite, meaningless conversation, all the while feeling like a marionette, my strings pulled by an unseen master, performing a role I had never auditioned for. Angelo would introduce me with a possessive pride, his hand often resting lightly on the small of my back, a gesture that felt both intimately possessive and utterly controlling. I quickly learned to read the subtle shifts in his demeanor, the unspoken commands in his fleeting glances, the veiled warnings in his low, measured voice, anticipating his every unspoken desire. The physical aspect of our marriage was complicated, an unspoken tension that hung in the air. Angelo never forced himself upon me. Our wedding night, to my immense surprise and relief, had passed without incident. He had simply looked at me, a long, assessing gaze that seemed to strip away my defenses, and then turned away, retreating to a separate, adjoining dressing room off the master suite. It was a strange kind of mercy, a relief from a fate I had dreaded, but also a chilling reminder of the purely transactional nature of our union. He didn't want my body, he wanted my name, my presence, my carefully crafted role as his respectable facade, his legitimate front. He was a man who took what he wanted without question. But he was also a man who profoundly understood the value of appearances, of a perfectly crafted narrative, of an untainted public image. Our bedroom remained a shared space, a testament to our legal bond. But a vast emotional chasm separated us, an unbridgeable gulf. I slept on my side of the impossibly large bed, acutely aware of his silent, watchful presence on the other, a constant, almost unsettling shadow. My family, oblivious to the true nature of my gilded cage, seemed to thrive under the newfound financial security that had miraculously appeared. The bakery was flourishing, bustling with customers, new, state-of-the-art equipment had been purchased, and the crushing debts, both overt and covert, were miraculously gone, vanished like a bad dream. Sophia was excelling in school, talking animatedly about her college applications, her future bright and limitless. My mother's color had returned, her laughter once again echoing through the house, a joyous sound I hadn't heard in years. My father, relieved of the crushing burden of debt and despair, had rediscovered his passion for baking, his hands tirelessly shaping dough, his eyes alight with a renewed sense of purpose and creativity. Their happiness was my anchor, the constant, unwavering reminder of why I had made this unimaginable, life-altering choice. Each time I saw their genuine smiles, I felt a pang of both profound satisfaction and an aching, consuming loneliness. Angelo, in his own stoic, calculating way, impeccably kept his end of the bargain. He meticulously ensured my family's well-being, sent them lavish gifts on holidays, and even made a few carefully orchestrated public appearances at the bakery, playing the role of the doting son-in-law, charming everyone with his quiet dignity. His public persona was impeccable, a shrewd, legitimate businessman with a philanthropic streak, a devoted, caring husband to his beautiful, much younger wife. The whispers about his true, shadowy activities never entirely ceased, but my presence, the legitimate, untainted face of the Rossi family, seemed to deflect some of the more aggressive scrutiny, diverting attention from his true dealings. I was his shield, just as I had promised, a living, breathing distraction. Life within the mansion, however, was isolating, a gilded existence devoid of true connection. I had no friends, no confidants, no one with whom I could truly share my fears or my truth. The staff were efficient and polite, almost deferential, but always kept a respectful, almost fearful distance, their faces impassive. I spent my days reading, exploring the vast, well-stocked library, or wandering through the sprawling, immaculate gardens, a prisoner in a magnificent golden cage, surrounded by beauty but yearning for freedom. The longing for my old life, for the simple, unadulterated joy of baking, of kneading dough with flour-dusted hands, of creating something tangible and delicious, grew stronger with each passing day. A persistent ache in my soul. I missed the comforting chaos of the bakery, the familiar, intoxicating scent of yeast and sugar, the easy banter with regular customers. One afternoon, seeking a solace I could only find in familiar actions, I ventured into the mansion's immense, state-of-the-art kitchen. It was sterile, gleaming, almost intimidating in its pristine perfection, a stark cry from the cozy, worn, flour-dusted heart of Il Forno della Nonna. I found myself drawn to a cabinet filled with pristine baking equipment, untouched and gleaming. A sudden, irresistible urge compelled me. I found flour, sugar, eggs, and with trembling hands that remembered their craft, I began to bake. The familiar rhythm of mixing, kneading, shaping brought a surprising sense of calm, a meditative focus that quieted the anxieties in my mind. For a few precious hours, I was just Isabella, the pastry chef, immersed in my art. Not Isabella Moretti, the Mafia boss's wife, trapped in a life of pretense. I baked a simple, rustic apple tart, its sweet, comforting aroma slowly filling the usually silent, sterile kitchen, transforming it into a place of warmth and life. Angelo found me there later that evening, when I was carefully placing the still warm tart on a cooling rack, admiring my handiwork. He stood in the doorway, a silent, imposing presence, and for a moment, a familiar surge of fear, of apprehension, coursed through me. He rarely, if ever, entered the kitchen. "What are you doing, Isabella?" he asked, his voice devoid of obvious emotion, yet with an underlying current of curiosity and unasked question. "Baking," I replied, my voice a little shaky, my hands still dusted with flour. It's what I used to do at my family's bakery, what I love to do." He walked closer, his eyes scanning the golden brown tart, then me, a thoughtful expression on his face. "It smells good, very good." He picked up a small piece, still warm, the steam curling, and took a bite, chewing slowly, deliberately. I watched him intently, bracing myself for a critique, a dismissive gesture, a sign of his indifference. Instead, a subtle change occurred in his expression, a softening around his eyes, a momentary letting down of his carefully constructed guard. It was fleeting, barely there, but I saw it, a tiny crack in his facade. "This is excellent," he said, his voice a low, rumbling acknowledgement, a genuine compliment. "Better than anything the chef here makes, by far." A warmth, unexpected and foreign, bloomed in my chest, a small, fragile spark of unexpected joy. A genuine compliment from Angelo Moretti, the feared Mafia boss. It was a tiny crack in the impenetrable wall between us. A momentary glimpse of the man beneath the terrifying mask, the man I rarely saw. From that day forward, I started baking regularly, a quiet rebellion, a reclaiming of a piece of myself. Sometimes Angelo would appear in the kitchen, not to command, not to supervise, but simply to observe, sometimes to taste, sometimes just to be present. It was a strange, unspoken ritual, a silent connection forged over flour and sugar, over shared moments of quiet enjoyment. He never explicitly asked me to bake for him, but I knew, implicitly, that he appreciated it, that it brought a rare comfort to his world. And in those quiet moments, in the soft hum of the kitchen, surrounded by the sweet sense of creation, I almost forgot the chains that bound me, the nature of my gilded cage. Almost. The tentative truce established in the kitchen, a fragile bridge built of sugar and flour, slowly began to extend beyond its sterile, gleaming walls. Angelo, while still guarded, still a man of immense power and dangerous secrets, began to interact with me differently, less as a trophy wife and more as a person of substance. He would occasionally ask about my day, inquire about my thoughts on a book I was reading, or share a brief, almost clinical, observation about the world, seeking my intellectual input. These were not conversations of intimacy, not yet, but rather intellectual exchanges. A subtle recognition of my mind beyond my purely decorative role as his respectable facade. I found myself drawn to his sharp intellect, his vast, almost encyclopedic knowledge of history and art, a surprising, cultivated side of him I never expected to encounter. He was far more complex, far more layered than the ruthless caricature I had initially envisioned. One evening, during one of our silent, formal dinners, he surprised me by breaking the unspoken rule of emotional distance. "What do you truly wish for, Isabella?" he asked, his voice low, his eyes piercing. The question caught me completely off guard. My initial impulse was to blurt out freedom, but that was a dangerous, perilous truth, one that could shatter the fragile peace we had established. I hesitated, searching for an honest yet safe answer, then spoke carefully, truthfully. I wish for my family's continued happiness and security, for them to never know hardship again. And I wish I could still bake professionally, to create, to innovate, to share my passion with the world, to have something of my own." He merely nodded, his expression unreadable, betraying no hint of his thoughts. I thought nothing more of it until a few weeks later. I was called to his study, and summons that always quickened my heart with a familiar unease, a premonition of command. He sat behind his massive desk as always, but this time a large, leather-bound portfolio lay open before him, filled with architectural drawings. "I've acquired a property," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet carrying an undeniable weight of authority. "A prime building in the old city, near the bustling markets, a perfect location. It's perfect for a new patisserie. Your patisserie. State-of-the-art equipment, the finest available. A staff you can personally select and train to your exacting standards. It will be called Isabella's Delights." My jaw dropped. I stared at him, utterly speechless, my mind struggling to process the enormity of his gesture. This was beyond anything I could have ever imagined. A patisserie, my own, named after me, a testament to my skill and passion. It was a dream I had long buried, believing it lost forever, now resurrected in the most unexpected, most astonishing way. "But why, Angelo?" I finally managed to whisper, my voice thick with disbelief, with unshed tears. He leaned back in his chair, a faint, almost imperceptible curve to his lips, a ghost of a smile. "It's good for my image, Isabella. A legitimate, respectable business, a testament to my devotion to my wife, to my commitment to the community. And you said you wished for it, didn't you?" His explanation was cold, calculated, a means to an end, a pragmatic justification. Yet, underneath the pragmatic exterior, I felt a flicker of something else. Something akin to genuine consideration, a quiet act of generosity. He had listened. He had acted. It wasn't about love, not in the romantic way most people understood it, but it was a gesture. A powerful, undeniable one that touched a deep chord within me. "Thank you," I said, the words feeling utterly inadequate for the rush of overwhelming emotion that surged through me. A mixture of gratitude and profound confusion. My voice was thick with unshed tears, my eyes stinging. "Don't thank me," he replied, his gaze unwavering, his expression firm. "Just ensure it's a resounding success. Your reputation is now intrinsically linked to mine, Isabella. Do not disappoint me." And so, Isabella's Delights was born, not just a patisserie, but a sanctuary, a symbol of my reclaimed identity. I threw myself into the project with a fervor, a passion I hadn't felt in years, a resurgence of my old self. I meticulously designed the interior, chose the exquisite menu, personally interviewed and trained every single member of the staff. It was my world, a tangible piece of myself. A sanctuary where I could lose myself completely in the art of baking, in the joy of creation. The patisserie quickly became a local sensation, renowned for its exquisite pastries, its delicate confections, its unparalleled quality. I spend my days there, surrounded by the sweet, comforting perfume of chocolate and vanilla, the joyful bustle of customers, the hum of contentment. It was a taste of freedom, a temporary reprieve from the shadows of my marriage, from the gilded cage. Yet, even in my sanctuary, the encroaching shadows of Moretti's dangerous world occasionally crept in, a chilling reminder of my reality. I would sometimes see Dante, his granite eyes sweeping the room, observing, ensuring everything was in order, ensuring my safety, or perhaps ensuring I stayed within the invisible lines of my role. Moretti himself would occasionally visit, not as the owner, but as a discerning customer, watching me with an intensity that both unnerved and intrigued me, his presence a silent, omnipresent reminder of our arrangement, of the dangerous pact we had made. One quiet afternoon, a man I didn't recognize entered the patisserie. He was impeccably dressed, exuding an air of sophistication, but his eyes held a glint of danger, a predatory intensity that sent a shiver down my spine, an instinctual warning. He ordered a small cake, his gaze lingering on me for an uncomfortably long time, a silent, unsettling appraisal. As he paid, he subtly, expertly, slipped a small, folded piece of paper into my hand, his fingers brushing mine in a fleeting, disturbing touch. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm. I quickly excused myself, hurrying to the back, to the relative privacy of my office, unfolding the note with trembling fingers. It was a single line scrawled in an unfamiliar, unsettling hand. He killed my brother. He will kill you too. Be careful. My blood ran cold, a chilling cascade through my veins. The note confirmed what I already knew, what the city whispered in hushed, fearful tones. What I had tried so desperately to ignore. Angelo Moretti was a truly dangerous man. A man capable of violence, of murder, of ruthless acts. The comfortable routine, the illusion of normalcy I had meticulously built around myself, shattered in that instant, replaced by a harsh, terrifying reality. The gilded cage was still a cage, beautiful and luxurious as it was, and the bars, though adorned with gold, were made of unforgiving steel, binding me to a perilous fate. I crumpled the note, my mind racing, 1,000 terrifying thoughts swirling through my brain. Who was this man? Why was he warning me? Was it a genuine warning, a desperate plea, or a cunning trap designed to ensnare me? I couldn't tell Angelo. To do so would be to admit I was compromised, to show a weakness he might exploit, to break the fragile trust we were slowly building. I was alone in this, utterly, terrifyingly alone. The realization was a cold, hard knot in my stomach. That night, I found myself unable to sleep, my mind racing, replaying the chilling words. The phrase "he killed my brother" echoed in my mind, painting Angelo in a darker, more sinister light than I had allowed myself to acknowledge, to accept. I had chosen to marry him, to save my family, to secure their future, but I had also chosen, perhaps naively, to ignore the true, brutal cost of his world, the blood on his hands. I had built a life on a foundation of unspoken truths and dangerous secrets, a house of cards that threatened to collapse at any moment. And now, a crack had appeared, a fissure threatening to expose everything, to reveal the terrifying reality of my situation. The feeling of being watched, of being in constant, imminent danger, intensified with each passing moment. My heart began to harbor a strange, unsettling paradox, a deep, profound gratitude for Angelo's generosity, for his protection, intertwined with a growing, bone-deep fear of the man I had married. The man capable of such darkness. The line between husband and captor, benefactor and executioner, blurred with each passing day, becoming indistinguishable. The anonymous note had planted a seed of dread that began to grow, twisting insidiously around my carefully constructed sense of security. I became more observant, more attuned to the subtle currents of danger that permeated Angelo's world, a world I was now inextricably bound to. Every stranger who entered the patisserie felt like a potential threat. Every fleeting glance held a hidden meaning, a veiled warning. The fear was a constant companion, a dull, persistent ache beneath my ribs, a reminder of the sword hanging over my head. Yet, in a strange, almost cruel twist of fate, it was during this period of heightened anxiety that I began to see glimmers of the man. Beyond the serpent, glimpses of humanity in the darkness. One cold evening, I was returning home late from the patisserie. A sudden, torrential downpour had turned the usually busy streets into slick, deserted channels, reflecting the harsh glow of streetlights. My driver, a quiet, stoic man named Vincenzo, was carefully navigating the treacherous, rain-slicked roads when a tire blew out with a violent hiss and a loud bang. We skidded to a halt on a dark, isolated stretch of road, far from any help. Vincenzo immediately tried to fix it, but the spare was flat and his phone had no signal. Cut off from the outside world. My own phone, in a cruel stroke of irony, was dead, its battery depleted. Panic began to claw at me, a cold, suffocating hand. I was stranded, vulnerable, alone in the heart of the city, yet feeling utterly isolated, utterly exposed. Just as a knot of terror tightened in my stomach, a sleek black car, instantly recognizable as one of Angelo's, pulled up smoothly behind us, its powerful headlights cutting through the driving rain, illuminating the scene. Angelo. He stepped out, unbothered by the downpour, his dark, impeccably tailored coat billowing around him like a cloak, an aura of authority surrounding him. His eyes, usually so guarded, so unreadable, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher as he took in the scene, a mixture of concern and irritation. "What happened?" he asked, his voice calm, authoritative, cutting through the drumming rain. Vincenzo quickly explained the unfortunate situation, his voice respectful but shaken. Angelo simply nodded, then turned to me, his gaze softening slightly. "Are you all right, Isabella? You look cold." Yes, I'm fine, Angelo, I said, surprised by the genuine, almost tender concern in his tone. A rare display of emotion. He didn't yell, he didn't even seem annoyed by the inconvenience. Instead, he made a quick call on his secure phone, speaking in low, clipped tones. And within minutes, a team of his men arrived, efficient and silent, to change the tire. While they worked, Angelo did something entirely unexpected. Something that chipped away at my preconceived notions of him. He opened the passenger door of his own car, gesturing for me to get in to escape the elements. As I settled inside, shivering slightly from the cold and the lingering fear, he handed me a thermos. Hot tea, he said, his voice softer than usual, a gentle rumble. You look cold, Isabella. I took a cautious sip. It was chamomile, warm and fragrant, a comforting balm against the chill in my bones. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The only sound the rhythmic drumming of rain against the windshield. The quiet efficiency of his men. It was the first time we had truly been alone, without the pretense of our public roles or the oppressive formality of the mansion. This is not how I envisioned my evening ending, I attempted, a weak, nervous smile on my lips, trying to break the silence. He looked at me, a rare, almost shy smile gracing his own lips. A ghost of a smile I'd seen in his sketches. Nor I. But sometimes unforeseen circumstances bring unexpected moments, don't they? His eyes met mine. And for a fleeting instant, I saw not the ruthless boss, the feared serpent, but a man. Complex and perhaps even a little vulnerable, a hidden depth. The next day, as the memory of the previous night lingered, a warmth in the chill, I stumbled upon something else that further chipped away at my rigid perception of him. I was in the library, searching for a specific book on ancient Roman history, when I noticed a small, worn leather-bound journal tucked away on a shelf, partially hidden behind a heavy tome. My curiosity, a dangerous trait in my precarious position, got the better of me. I opened it, my fingers trembling slightly. Inside, the pages were filled with delicate, intricate sketches of vast landscapes, of crumbling Roman ruins, of classical architecture drawn with an astonishing skill. And to my utter astonishment, there were several incredibly lifelike portraits. Of me. Not formal portraits, but candid sketches, me laughing in the kitchen, flour on my nose. Me reading by the window, lost in a book, me focused intently on my baking. My brow furrowed in concentration. They were drawn with an artist's keen eye and incredible talent, capturing not just my likeness, but a fleeting emotion, a vulnerability I rarely showed to the world. My heart caught in my throat, a sudden, sharp ache. Angelo was an artist. A hidden artist, secretly sketching me, capturing moments of my unguarded self. Moments I didn't even realize he was observing. The thought was both unnerving and profoundly moving. It suggested a level of observation, of quiet consideration, that profoundly contradicted everything I believed about him, about his cold, calculating nature. This ruthless, dangerous man had a hidden world of beauty, of quiet contemplation, of artistic expression. I carefully closed the journal, my mind reeling. A kaleidoscope of conflicting emotions swirling within me. The man who had saved my family, the man who had given me my dream patisserie, the man who was feared by so many was also the man who sketched my face with such tenderness, with such intimate detail. The juxtaposition was jarring, unsettling, yet undeniably intriguing, a dangerous puzzle. Later that day, I found him in his study, as usual, immersed in his papers, a formidable figure. I held the journal, my hands trembling slightly, unsure of how to approach him. I found this, I said, placing it gently on his desk, the leather soft beneath my fingers. He looked up, his expression hardening immediately, a flash of something akin to alarm, of exposure in his eyes. He quickly glanced at the journal, then back at me, his face a mask once more. An impenetrable fortress. You shouldn't have been rummaging through my private belongings, Isabella, he said. His voice devoid of emotion, a cold, hard barrier between us, a clear boundary. They're beautiful, Angelo, I said, ignoring his reprimand, compelled by an urge to acknowledge the hidden beauty. The sketches, especially mine. He looked at the journal, then away, a faint, almost imperceptible flush creeping up his neck. It was a rare, startling sign of embarrassment, of vulnerability, of being seen. He closed the journal with a decisive snap, a finality that spoke volumes. They are nothing. A foolish pastime, a way to pass the time. They're not foolish, I insisted, a strange courage bubbling within me, pushing me to speak my truth. They show another side of you, Angelo. A beautiful side. He remained silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on some unseen point beyond my shoulder, lost in thought. Then, he looked at me, his eyes holding a complex mix of frustration and something else. Something softer, more human, more exposed. Don't mistake a flicker of light for the entire spectrum, Isabella. My world is still dark, still dangerous. You would do well to remember that, to never forget it. His words were a warning, a reassertion of the harsh boundaries of his world. But they also felt like a confession, a recognition of the internal struggle he waged. The constant battle between light and shadow within him. In that moment, the terrifying Mafia boss, the calculating husband, felt human. And in that humanity, a dangerous seed of something new began to sprout within my heart, not love. Not yet, but a profound curiosity, a reluctant empathy, and a dizzying, overwhelming sense of confusion. I had married a monster, but I was slowly discovering he was also a man, burdened by his own shadows and perhaps even a silent, unacknowledged yearning for beauty he could only express through his hidden art. The lines were blurring, the carefully defined roles dissolving, and my heart, once so guarded, so protected, felt dangerously exposed. Vulnerable to the very man I had sworn to keep it safe from. The dance at the ball, the fleeting moments of connection, and the unexpected glimpse into Angelo's hidden artistic soul lingered in my mind for days. A dangerous melody replaying itself. A persistent whisper that challenged my preconceived notions. Angelo, for his part, seemed to retreat behind his usual impenetrable mask, making it difficult to discern if the intimacy of that evening had been as impactful for him as it had undeniably been for me. Yet, the seed of something new had been planted and it began to sprout, fragile and hesitant, in the fertile ground of my increasingly confused and conflicted heart. The fear remained, a constant undertone, but it was now irrevocably laced with a burgeoning, unsettling curiosity, a desire to understand the man behind the myth, the man behind the fear. One crisp autumn afternoon, a lavish charity ball was scheduled. A grand affair at which Angelo's formidable presence was absolutely obligatory. As I dressed, the silk gown shimmering in the soft, intimate light of my dressing room, I felt a familiar tension tighten in my stomach. These elaborate events were always a performance, a carefully choreographed dance of power, wealth, and thinly veiled pretense, and I was expected to play my part flawlessly. Angelo, in his impeccably tailored suit, looked every inch the formidable figure he was, his silver streaks at his temples lending him an air of distinguished authority, an almost regal presence that commanded respect and fear. As we entered the grand ballroom, a hush fell over the assembled crowd, a testament to his unspoken influence, to the palpable weight of his power. We moved through the throng of elegantly dressed guests, exchanging polite pleasantries, each interaction a delicate balancing act of social graces and veiled agendas. Angelo, usually reserved and almost taciturn in public, seemed more engaged that evening. His conversation sharp, his wit surprisingly dry and intelligent. He even shared a few quiet jokes with me. A rare display of levity and intimacy that caught me completely off guard, making me smile genuinely. Midway through the evening, a woman approached us, her eyes glittering with an unmistakable animosity, a venomous spite that was almost palpable. She was strikingly beautiful, with fiery red hair that cascaded down her back in a dress that left little to the imagination. Designed to provoke. Angelo, she purred, her voice dripping with a false sweetness that barely masked her underlying malice. Still collecting pretty little things, I see. And this one looks even more fragile than the last. She then turned her venomous gaze directly to me, her eyes narrowing. Be careful, dear. The serpent always sheds his skin when he's bored. You're just the latest accessory. My blood ran cold, a chilling cascade through my veins. The woman was clearly a past associate, perhaps a former lover. And her words were a chilling confirmation of Angelo's ruthless reputation, a stark, painful reminder of the dangerous, unforgiving world I inhabited, a world where women were often disposable. Before I could even react, before I could formulate a response, Angelo's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on my arm, a silent command. His face hardening into an expression of glacial indifference, a terrifying calm. "I believe you are mistaken, Elena," he said, his voice dangerously low. A menacing rumble that sent shivers through me. "My wife is neither a possession nor a plaything. And I am never, ever bored." His eyes, usually so controlled and impassive, held a flash of something possessive, almost protective. A possessiveness that both unnerved and strangely comforted me. He then turned his back on her, a dismissive gesture that effectively ended the conversation, and led me away through the thronging crowd, his grip on my arm firm. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of my fear. "Who was that, Angelo?" I whispered, my voice barely audible, still shaken by the encounter. "An old acquaintance," he replied, his jaw tight, his voice clipped. "Irrelevant. Pay her no mind, Isabella. She is beneath your concern." But I couldn't. Her cruel words, echoing the chilling phrase "he killed my brother" from the anonymous note, now intertwined with Elena's veiled warning, painted a terrifyingly vivid picture of the darkness that surrounded Angelo. I knew he was dangerous, I had accepted that, but hearing it directly, feeling the tangible hostility of his past, made it all too real, all too close. Later, as the orchestra played a slow, romantic waltz, the elegant melodies filling the grand ballroom, Angelo surprised me by extending his hand. A silent, unexpected invitation. "Would you care to dance, Isabella?" I hesitated. We had never danced before, not truly. This was another public display, a confirmation of our marital feude, a performance for the curious eyes around us. But there was also an unspoken invitation, a rare moment of potential closeness, of genuine connection in the midst of the chaos and pretense. I placed my hand in his, and he led me onto the dance floor with a surprising gentleness. As he held me, his arm firm but tender around my waist, his other hand clasping mine, I felt a strange current pass between us, an electric spark. He moved with a surprising grace, leading me effortlessly, his steps confident and precise. We swayed to the music, surrounded by other couples, yet in our own private bubble, isolated by an unspoken intimacy. His gaze was intense, focused solely on me, searching, seeing. I found myself looking directly into his eyes, searching for answers, for the man who drew sketches, for the man who brought me tea in the rain, for the man who was both feared and inexplicably drawing me in. "Are you truly never bored, Angelo?" I asked, the words escaping before I could fully censor them. A daring question born of sudden courage. A faint smile touched his lips, a genuine one this time, a ghost of the smile in his sketches. A rare glimpse of his inner self. "Not anymore," he murmured, his gaze softening, his thumb tracing a slow, tender circle on the back of my hand, a gesture that sent shivers through me. In that profound moment, as we danced, the music swelling around us, the lines between my immense gratitude, my lingering fear, and this strange, burgeoning empathy blurred even further. I was dancing with the devil, yes, but in his eyes, I saw not just the serpent, the feared Mafia boss, but a complex, lonely man, burdened by his power, yearning for connection. And to my utter horror, a dangerous, forbidden feeling, a faint, almost imperceptible warmth, began to unfurl in my chest, a blossoming emotion I couldn't deny. It wasn't love, not yet, not in the traditional sense, but it was a recognition, a powerful, undeniable connection that scared me more than any physical threat, more than any veiled warning. I was losing my heart, piece by agonizing piece, to the man I had married to save my family. The man I had sworn to keep my heart safe from. The irony was a bitter, painful taste in my mouth, yet the feeling was undeniable, drawing me in like a moth to a dangerous flame. The gilded cage was slowly, subtly becoming a different kind of prison, one built not just of cold, hard steel, but of unexpected emotions, of a terrifying, irresistible pull. The dance at the ball, the fleeting moments of unspoken connection, had irrevocably shifted something profound between Angelo and me. It was a dangerous melody that replayed itself endlessly in my mind, a constant whisper challenging every preconceived notion I held about him, about us. Angelo, for his part, seemed to retreat behind his usual impenetrable mask, making it difficult to discern if the intimacy of that evening had been as impactful for him as it had undeniably been for me. Yet, the seed of something new had been planted, and it began to sprout, fragile and hesitant, in the fertile ground of my increasingly confused and conflicted heart. The fear remained, a persistent undertone, but it was now laced with a burgeoning, unsettling curiosity, a desperate desire to understand the man behind the myth. The man behind the fear. One cold, tempestuous evening, a fierce storm raged outside, mirroring the tumultuous turmoil within me. Thunder cracked, echoing through the vast mansion, and rain lashed against the windows with relentless fury, blurring the world outside. The power flickered erratically, then died with a sudden, eerie silence, plunging the vast house into a profound, unsettling darkness. The emergency lights, dim and flickering, cast long, dancing shadows that added to the already unsettling atmosphere, making familiar objects appear distorted and menacing. I was in the library, trying to read by the uncertain glow of a single battery-operated lamp, when Angelo entered. He seemed utterly unperturbed by the darkness, his presence as commanding and imposing as ever, an unwavering force in the chaos. "The power will be out for a while, Isabella," he stated, his voice calm, measured, cutting through the silence of the storm. He settled into an armchair directly opposite mine, his silhouette barely visible in the dim, flickering light, a dark, imposing shape against the gloom. The silence that followed was thick with unspoken thoughts, with unacknowledged truths. The usual distractions of light and sound were gone, leaving only the insistent sound of the raging storm and the frantic pounding of my own heart. I felt a sudden, irresistible urge to break through the carefully constructed barriers between us, to demand the truth, to seek an honesty that might finally liberate me, or utterly destroy me. "Angelo," I began, my voice a little shaky but firm with newfound resolve. "The woman at the ball, Elena. She said you shed your skin, that you were dangerous. And I received a note. It said you killed someone. Her brother, perhaps?" The air in the room instantly grew heavy, crackling with a dangerous, almost palpable energy. Angelo stiffened, his body becoming rigid, tense, like a coiled spring. The shadows deepened around him, making him appear more menacing than ever. A figure born of the darkness. "You shouldn't believe everything you hear, Isabella," he said, his voice dangerously low, a clear, unmistakable warning. "Whispers in my world are often designed to mislead, to wound." "But is it true, Angelo?" I pressed, my courage fueled by a desperate, agonizing need for honesty, for truth in this house of pervasive lies, this labyrinth of deception. "Did you kill someone? Have you taken a life?" He was silent for a long, agonizing moment, the only sound the insistent, rhythmic drumming of the rain against the glass, the distant rumble of thunder. Then he let out a heavy sigh, a sound of resignation, perhaps of immense weariness, of an unbearable burden. "Yes, Isabella," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, a stark, brutal confession. "I have, more than once. It is the nature of my existence." My breath caught in my throat, a sharp, painful gasp. Despite my suspicions, despite the dark rumors, hearing him confess it, hearing the cold, stark truth uttered from his own lips, was a brutal punch to the gut, a visceral shock. The monster was real. The fear, which had been tempered by empathy, by understanding, now surged back, raw and potent. Overwhelming. "Why, Angelo?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling uncontrollably, barely a whisper. "Why did you do it? What compelled you to take a life?" He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his gaze fixed on the dancing shadows, avoiding my eyes. "My world is not one of niceties and legalities, Isabella. It's a brutal, unforgiving world of absolute loyalty and bitter betrayal, of unbridled power and constant, desperate survival. Sometimes, to protect what is mine, to ensure the very survival of my enterprise, of my people. And yes, to protect those I deem worthy of protection. Those I care for, I have had to make difficult choices. Choices that stain my hands, that scar my soul." He looked at me then, his eyes reflecting the dim, flickering light, holding a strange, complex mix of regret and unwavering resolve, a burden of command. "The man who sent you that anonymous note, his brother, was a rival, a man who sought to destroy me. He betrayed me, attempted to undermine my operations, threatened my people, even my family. He left me no choice. And Elena, she was once a part of my world, a lover, but she chose ambition over loyalty, greed over trust. She's dangerous, Isabella, a viper who strikes from the shadows." The confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating, thick with the weight of unused blood and unspoken truths. I processed his words, the brutal, unsparing logic of his world, a world utterly alien to mine. He wasn't apologizing, not truly, not in the way one would apologize for a mistake. He was explaining, justifying, painting a grim picture of a man who did what was necessary, even if it was abhorrent, even if it cost him a piece of his soul. "Does it bother you, Angelo?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, afraid of the answer. To take a life? To live with that on your conscience?" He looked away again, his jaw tightening, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "It weighs on me, Isabella. More than you could ever imagine, a burden I carry every single day. But it is the price of my position, the terrible burden of my power, the constant demand of my world. It's a fundamental part of who I am, of what I must be. And you, Isabella, you chose to marry that man. You chose this world." His words, a bitter, painful reminder of my desperate bargain, stung with a cruel truth. He was right. I had chosen this path. I had willingly walked into the lion's den, fully aware of the dangers, but perhaps not fully comprehending the immense moral cost, the price of my soul. And yet, hearing him admit to the darkness, seeing the faint shadow of regret, of weariness in his eyes, solidified something within me. He was not a cartoon villain, a one-dimensional monster. He was a flawed, dangerous, deeply complex man, burdened by his own choices, living by a brutal code that demanded ruthlessness and sacrifice. "I know," I said, my voice gaining a surprising strength, a newfound conviction. "I chose you to save my family. And you kept your word, Angelo. You saved them from ruin, from despair." He looked back at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, then a slow, profound nod. An acknowledgement. "And you, Isabella? What will become of your heart in this dangerous, unforgiving world?" His question hung in the air, echoing the very turmoil within me, the profound confusion that gripped my soul. I had no answer, no simple, easy truth. My heart, once so guarded, so carefully protected, felt like a fragile thing, caught between the immense gratitude for his protection and the profound horror of his deeds. Between the fear he inspired and the undeniable, terrifying connection I felt, the growing empathy. I was losing myself in this complicated man, losing my heart to the very person I had sworn to keep it safe from. The confession was a dangerous step, a breaking of old boundaries, a shattering of illusions. And in its aftermath, I knew, with a chilling, undeniable certainty, that my life would never, ever be the same. The darkness of his world had seeped into my own, mingling with my light, and surprisingly, disturbingly, I was no longer sure I wanted to escape it entirely. The storm eventually passed, leaving a crisp, clean air in its wake. But the storm within me continued to rage, a tumultuous sea of conflicting emotions. Angelo's confession, stark and brutal in its honesty, had peeled back another crucial layer of his carefully constructed persona. He was no longer a vague, amorphous threat, a figure of whispers and rumors, but a man who had openly admitted to violence, to murder. The fear was palpable, a constant thumb beneath my skin. Yet it was now inextricably intertwined with a deeper, more nuanced understanding, a strange, almost reluctant respect for his brutal honesty, for his unvarnished truth. He hadn't sugarcoated his reality, hadn't tried to deceive me further. He had laid bare the darkness that defined his world, and in doing so had exposed a raw, unsettling truth about himself, a truth that resonated with an uncomfortable honesty. The days that followed were charged with an unspoken tension, a new current that flowed beneath the surface of our interactions. Our conversations remained largely formal, yet there was a new depth, a subtle understanding that had emerged, a recognition of the dangerous secrets we now intimately shared. I found myself observing him with renewed intensity, trying desperately to reconcile the cold-blooded leader with the sensitive artist, the ruthless pragmatist with the man who offered me tea in the rain, the man who wore both light and shadow with equal measure. One morning, while I was at Isabella's Delights, immersed in the comforting, familiar scent of fresh-baked bread and sweet pastries, Dante, Angelo's primary enforcer, entered, his massive presence immediately silencing the cheerful hum of the patisserie, causing customers to glance nervously. His granite eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine concern, or perhaps a stark warning etched in their unyielding depths. "Mrs. Moretti," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that cut through the silence. "We have a significant problem. A serious situation." My heart instantly quickened, a familiar knot of dread forming in my stomach. "What is it, Dante? Is Angelo all right?" "Angelo needs you to come to the mansion. Immediately. And discreetly." No questions, no delays, the urgency in his tone was unmistakable. A clear indication of grave danger. I quickly handed over my duties to my trusted head baker, giving brief instructions, and followed Dante, my stomach churning with apprehension with a growing sense of foreboding. The drive to the mansion felt interminable, each turn of the wheel ratcheting up my anxiety, each passing moment stretching into an eternity. When we arrived, the grand mansion, usually so pristine and orderly, felt profoundly different. There was a subtle undercurrent of chaos, a tense, frantic energy that hummed in the air, making the hair on my arms stand on end. Dante led me directly to Angelo's study, his pace brisk and determined. The massive door was ajar, and as I approached, I heard raised voices, sharp and angry, punctuated by metallic sounds. I stepped inside. The room was a scene of controlled pandemonium, a tableau of recent violence. Papers were scattered across the floor, a heavy, antique chair was overturned, and several of Angelo's men stood with grim, watchful faces, their hands resting ominously on the hilt of their concealed weapons. Angelo stood before his desk, his usually immaculate suit slightly disheveled, a trickle of blood drying on his temple, stark against his pale skin. His face was a mask of cold fury, his eyes blazing with a dangerous, terrifying intensity. Opposite him, two men I didn't recognize were being held by his enforcers, their faces bruised and defiant, their clothes torn. One of them, I realized with a sickening lurch, was the very man who had given me the anonymous note at the patisserie. His eyes now filled with a desperate hatred. He looked at me, a sneer twisting his bruised lips. "Look, the little wife. Come to see your husband's downfall, have you? You think you're safe with him, little bird? He'll just use you and discard you like all the others before you." Angelo's eyes narrowed and a terrifying coldness descended upon his features, an almost unnatural calm. He stepped forward, his voice dangerously low and menacing, filled with a primal fury. "Silence! You will not speak to my wife in such a manner. You will not disrespect her." "Wife?" The man scoffed again, his defiance unwavering. "She's just a bargaining chip, a pretty distraction. She doesn't belong in your world, Moretti. She knows what you are. She knows you killed my brother. She knows your secrets." The revelation of my knowledge, thrown out so carelessly, so cruelly, hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Angelo's gaze flickered to me, a flash of surprise, then something else. Something akin to understanding, or perhaps a different, more personal kind of anger at my fear, or anger at my deception. "This is not her concern," Angelo stated, his voice now dangerously calm, a deceptive quietude. "She is my wife and her safety, her honor is paramount. You have threatened her, you have brought her into this, and for that, you will pay a heavy price." The other man, struggling violently against his captors, suddenly spat out. "You think you're so clever, Moretti? You think you can control everything, everyone? We know about your dealings with the foreign consortium. We know about the shipments. And we have a buyer for your precious Isabella's delights. You think your little legitimate front will save you? It's just another vulnerability, another weakness we can exploit. My patisserie. They knew about it. They were using it against him, against me. My carefully built dream, my sanctuary, now a direct target. My family, completely innocent, now potentially at risk, dragged into this deadly game. The fear for my loved ones, the very reason I had married Angelo, surged through me, overpowering every other emotion, every other thought. Angelo's eyes, fixed on the man who dared to mention my patisserie, were now devoid of any humanity, any discernible emotion. Pure, unadulterated rage, cold and terrifying, emanated from him, a palpable force. He raised his hand, not to strike, not to hurt, but to give a silent, chilling command. His enforcers understood instantly. They dragged the two men out of the room, their struggles and defiant shouts quickly fading into the terrifying distance, leaving a chilling silence in their wake. The silence that followed was chilling, heavy with the aftermath of violence. Angelo turned to me, his gaze intense, assessing, searching my face. The blood on his temple stood out starkly against his pale skin, a visceral reminder of the danger. He looked dangerous, more formidable than I had ever seen him. "You knew," he said, his voice flat, emotionless, a statement, not a question. "About the note." "About everything," he said. I nodded, my voice a whisper, barely audible. "I found it. I was scared, Angelo. Afraid. I didn't know who to trust, who to believe. He stared at me, his eyes piercing, and for a moment I thought he would unleash his fury. His anger at my deception, at my silence. Instead, his eyes softened, just perceptibly, a flicker of understanding, of weary acceptance. You should have told me, Isabella. You should have trusted me. I was afraid, I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush, raw and honest. Afraid of what you would do. Afraid of you. Of the darkness. He walked towards me, his steps slow and deliberate, a careful approach. He stopped directly before me, his eyes searching mine, seeking an answer to an unspoken question. And now, Isabella, he asked, his voice low, almost a whisper. Are you still afraid? I looked into his eyes, into the depths of his dangerous, complex soul. My family was safe because of him. My dreams were alive, flourishing because of him. He was a killer, a ruthless leader, a man capable of terrible deeds, but he was also my protector, my unexpected benefactor. And in that moment, as the lingering remnants of danger hung in the air, as the smell of blood and tension still permeated the room, I made a profound, irrevocable choice. Yes, I said, my voice clear and unwavering, stronger than I thought possible, I am still afraid. Angelo, the fear is a part of this world. But I am also here. And my loyalty, my complete, unwavering loyalty is to you. As your wife, as your partner. I will help you, whatever you need, whatever it takes. His expression softened further, a flicker of surprise, then a slow, almost imperceptible nod. A profound acknowledgement. He reached out, his hand gently touching my cheek, tracing the line of my jaw with a feather-light touch. It was a gesture of unexpected tenderness, of profound trust, a silent acknowledgement of my choice, of my commitment. Thank you, Isabella, he murmured, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't quite name, but understood implicitly. For your loyalty. For your trust. In that pivotal moment, standing amidst the wreckage of a skirmish, the undeniable, terrifying truth hit me with the force of a tidal wave. My heart was no longer my own. It had tangled itself inextricably in the complex, dangerous web of Angelo Moretti. The fear was still there, a constant companion, a dull ache. But now it walked hand in hand with something far more dangerous, far more powerful, a fierce, terrifying protectiveness, an undeniable empathy, and a love that had bloomed in the darkest, most unexpected of places. I had married the Mafia boss to save my family, and in doing so, I had lost my heart. Not to a monstrous caricature, but to a man, a dangerous, complicated, and utterly captivating man. And I knew, with a certainty that both thrilled and terrified me, that I would fight for him. Just as he had fought for us, for me, for my family. The gilded cage was no longer a prison, it was a home. A sanctuary built on a foundation of dangerous truths and an unexpected, bewildering love that defied all logic. The confession of loyalty, spoken amidst the lingering tension of the study, had irrevocably shifted the dynamic between Angelo and me, shattering the last vestiges of our transactional arrangement. The invisible walls that had separated us for so long, built of pretense and emotional distance, seemed to crumble, replaced by a profound, if dangerous, intimacy. A deeper connection that surprised and thrilled me. Our marriage, once a calculated transaction, a means to an end, began to transform into something far more complex, far more real, far more meaningful. Angelo's demeanor softened, not dramatically, not in a way that would compromise his authority or reputation, but in subtle, almost imperceptible ways. He began to seek my counsel, not on the brutal intricacies of his illicit dealings, but on the public-facing aspects of his empire, the legitimate businesses, the community relations, the delicate art of public perception. He valued my perspective, my innate understanding of the legitimate world, of human nature beyond the shadows, and I found myself actively engaged in discussions about expanding Isabella's delights into a larger enterprise, about new charitable initiatives, about cultivating strategic alliances in respectable circles. I became his confidant, his trusted sounding board, a true partner in a way I never thought possible. The physical distance between us also diminished, gradually, tentatively. He would linger in the mornings, sometimes sharing a quiet cup of coffee with me, his gaze lingering on me, a warmth in his eyes that had never been there before, a silent affection. He started joining me for breakfast at the patisserie, not as the intimidating boss, but as a husband, observing me with a silent pride as I interacted effortlessly with customers and staff. A genuine smile on his lips. The discreet touch of his hand on my back became less about control and more about affection. A reassuring, intimate gesture. One quiet evening, as we sat in the magnificent library, the roaring fire casting a warm, dancing glow on our faces, he spoke of his past, something he had rarely, if ever, done before. A guarded secret he now chose to share. He recounted stories of his difficult, impoverished childhood, of the desperation and hardship that had driven him to the streets, to the brutal life he now led, to the choices he had to make for survival. He spoke of betrayals and devastating losses, of the brutal choices he had been forced to make to survive, to protect the few people he cared for, to carve out a place for himself in a world that offered him nothing. He spoke of the heavy, suffocating weight of his immense responsibilities, of the constant threat of violence, of the pervasive loneliness that came with his power, with his position. As he spoke, his voice low and raw with unspoken emotion, I saw the deep, indelible scars of his past, the profound pain that lay hidden beneath the cold, calculating exterior, the burden he carried. And in those moments, my heart ached for him, for the man who carried such an unbearable burden, who had endured so much. You once asked if it bothered me to take a life, he said, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames, reflecting the turmoil within him. It doesn't just bother me, Isabella. It haunts me. Every single time. The faces, the moments, they never truly leave you. But sometimes there is no other path, no other way to protect what matters most, what you hold dear. His vulnerability was a profound gift, a testament to the deep, fragile trust that had slowly, painstakingly blossomed between us. I reached out, my hand instinctively covering his, a silent gesture of comfort, of understanding, of acceptance. He turned his hand, intertwining his fingers with mine. A touch that sent a jolt of unexpected warmth, of electric connection through me. A thrilling current. I understand, Angelo, I whispered, meaning it with every fiber of my being. My voice thick with emotion. It's a heavy burden to carry, a terrible weight. But you don't have to carry it alone anymore. Not anymore. He looked at me, his eyes dark and intense, holding a depth of emotion I had never seen. A powerful longing. No, he murmured, his thumb tracing slow, tender circles on my skin. His voice rough with an unspoken gratitude. I suppose I don't. It was a quiet admission, a profound shift in our relationship, a merging of our separate worlds. The fear I had once felt for him had receded, not entirely gone, but replaced by a fierce, almost visceral protectiveness. A desperate desire to shield him from the very darkness he embodied, from the world that sought to destroy him. I saw not just the dangerous man, the ruthless leader, but the lonely man. The man burdened by his past, the man who had, against all odds, captured my heart. Our nights, once separated by an unspoken chasm, by a cautious respect for boundaries, slowly became filled with a tentative, growing intimacy. It was not a grand, passionate romance, not yet, but a slow, tender unraveling of defenses. We started talking in the darkness, sharing secrets whispered in hushed tones, finding solace in each other's presence, in the unspoken connection. His touch became less a statement of possession and more an expression of affection, a hesitant, tender exploration of a connection he had never sought, yet now clung to with a desperate need. I discovered a surprising gentleness in his hands, a tenderness in his kisses that utterly belied his formidable, ruthless reputation. My family, still blissfully unaware of the true complexities of our relationship, of the dangerous world I inhabited, seemed genuinely happy for us. Sophia adored Angelo, charmed by his occasional lavish gifts and his surprising warmth towards her, by his quiet kindness. My parents, seeing the genuine contentment in my eyes, finally shed their lingering anxieties and fears about my marriage. They saw a strong, devoted husband, a generous benefactor, a powerful man who clearly cherished their daughter, who held her in high esteem. The lie I had initially constructed, the faucet I had painstakingly built, had, in a strange, unexpected way, become a profound truth. The world outside our mansion, however, remained dangerous, a constant threat lurking in the shadows. The incident in the study, the brazen threats against Angelo's operations and my beloved patisserie, were a stark, chilling reminder of the volatile, unpredictable nature of his life. He was still the head of a powerful organization, still facing relentless enemies who sought to undermine him, to destroy everything he had built. But now, I was no longer just an observer, a shielded wife, a distant figure. I was his partner, bound to him not just by a formal vow, but by a heart that had irrevocably chosen him, a heart that beat in rhythm with his. One crisp morning, Angelo received grave news of a major threat. A ruthless rival faction attempting to seize control of a crucial trade route, threatening his very foundations. He became withdrawn, his face etched with worry and grim determination, his gaze distant, lost in calculation. I could feel the tension radiating from him, the immense weight of the decisions he had to make. Decisions that held life and death in their balance. "What is it, Angelo?" I asked, placing a comforting, reassuring hand on his arm. My own heart sinking with dread. "What's happened?" He looked at me, his eyes tired, heavy with the weight of his burdens. "A rival. Ambitious, ruthless. A man named Marco. He seeks to undo everything I've built, everything I've fought for. And he won't stop at anything to achieve his goals." He paused, his gaze softening as he looked at me, a flicker of fear for my safety in his eyes. "Including you, Isabella. And your family. He knows they are my weakness, my vulnerability. Your bakery, your patisserie, they are targets, instruments he will use against me." My heart pounded, a frantic drum in my chest. The danger was real, immediate, palpable. But the fear was no longer paralyzing. It was tempered by a fierce resolve, a newfound strength. "Then we will face it together, Angelo," I said, my voice firm, unwavering. "I am your wife. And I am with you, every step of the way. Whatever comes, we face it as one." He looked at me, a flicker of surprise, then a slow, profound smile. A recognition of my unwavering commitment. He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly, fiercely, his face buried in my hair, inhaling my scent. "My Isabella," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, with gratitude and love. "My love. My strength." In that powerful embrace, I knew with a chilling certainty that settled deep in my soul. I had married the Mafia boss to save my family, and I had indeed lost my heart. But it wasn't a loss born of regret, it was a surrender born of love. A love that had bloomed in the shadows, a fierce, complicated, and utterly unexpected love for the man who was both my salvation and my danger. And I was ready to face whatever lay ahead with him, by his side, in his perilous world. For better or for worse, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. The days that followed Angelo's revelation were a whirlwind of heightened security. Hushed conversations carried in low tones and an undercurrent of palpable, pervasive tension that clung to every corner of the mansion. The rival faction, led by the ruthless and cunning Marco, was relentless, launching a series of calculated attacks designed to cripple Angelo's operations, undermine his authority, and destabilize his carefully constructed empire. The mansion, once a gilded cage, became a true fortress, its impenetrable walls and intricate security now serving as a vital shield against a very real, very present danger that lurked just beyond its gates. I, too, found myself drawn deeper into the brutal intricacies of Angelo's world. No longer a passive observer, no longer merely a decorative wife. While he shielded me meticulously from the most brutal and violent realities of his confrontations, he increasingly sought my advice on the legitimate fronts, on public relations, on how to maintain an unwavering image of stability and strength amidst the brewing storm, the escalating conflict. My patisserie, Isabella's Delights, became a strategic asset, a powerful symbol of Moretti's legitimate success, a defiance against Marco's attempts to portray him as a failing, isolated figure. Losing his grip, I worked tirelessly, dedicating every waking hour to ensuring its continued, undeniable success. Using my charm, my business acumen, and my deep community connections to solidify its place, indirectly strengthening Angelo's position, his public standing. One terrifying evening, a car bomb exploded just a few blocks from the patisserie. A deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the city, a clear, unmistakable message meant for Angelo. Though, miraculously, no one from my staff or any customers were harmed. The incident shook me to my core, leaving me trembling and gasping for breath. The proximity of danger, the horrifying realization of how close my innocent dreams had come to being shattered, to being engulfed in flames, was a stark, brutal reminder of the perilous tightrope we walked, of the thin line between peace and utter chaos. Angelo, his face grim, his eyes filled with a terrifying resolve, rushed to my side. His concern overriding his usual stoicism, his carefully constructed composure. He held me tightly, fiercely, his embrace a powerful, silent promise to keep me safe, to protect me from the encroaching darkness. "This must end, Isabella," he stated, his voice a low, guttural growl, his eyes blazing with a dangerous, primal fury. "He has crossed a line that cannot be uncrossed." The decisive, brutal confrontation with Marco was now inevitable, a storm that had to break. Angelo gathered his most trusted men, his face set in a grim, unyielding determination. A warrior preparing for battle. I watched him prepare, my heart heavy with a tumultuous mixture of profound fear and an equally profound love. He was going into a battle that could cost him his life, and the thought of losing him, of this dangerous, complicated man who had captured my heart, was utterly unbearable. A pain that pierced my very soul. Before he left, as his men waited silently outside, he pulled me aside, his gaze intense, piercing through me, searching for my understanding. "Isabella," he began, his voice rough with suppressed emotion, with the weight of what he had to do. "If anything happens, if I don't return from this, you must take Sophia and your parents. Go far away. Disappear, leave this life behind. My assets will be transferred to you, enough for a new life, a life free from this darkness, free from this violence. Promise me, Isabella. Promise me you will survive, that you will live." Tears welled in my eyes, blurring his beloved face. The brutal reality of his world, of his potential sacrifice, hit me with a raw, visceral force. A gut-wrenching pain. "No, Angelo," I whispered, shaking my head vehemently, tears streaming down my face. "Don't say that. Don't even think it. You will return. You must. And I won't go anywhere without you. My place is here, with you." He pulled me into a fierce, desperate embrace, kissing me with a raw passion that spoke volumes. A desperate plea for survival, for connection. "My Isabella," he murmured against my hair, his voice thick with emotion, with love and fear. "My love. My heart. Be safe. Be strong." He left then, a powerful, solitary figure disappearing into the darkness of the night, leaving me alone in the vast, silent mansion, listening to the pounding of my own heart. A frantic drumbeat against the silence of my fear and my burgeoning, desperate hope. The hours that followed were an eternity, each minute stretching into an agonizing lifetime. I paced the floor, I prayed with a fervor I hadn't known I possessed. I tried desperately to focus on anything but the terrifying possibilities. The endless scenarios of loss and despair. The silence of the mansion was oppressive, each resonant tick of the grandfather clock echoing the agonizing passage of time. Then, just as dawn began to paint the sky with streaks of gray and rose, chasing away the darkness, I heard the familiar, unmistakable rumble of Angelo's car approaching. A sound that brought tears of profound relief to my eyes. My breath caught in my throat, a joyous gasp. I rushed to the front door, throwing it open just as he stepped out of the vehicle, his figure emerging from the pre-dawn gloom. He looked utterly exhausted, his expensive suit disheveled, stained with dirt and grime, a fresh, angry cut visible on his cheek, but his eyes, though weary, held a triumphant, resolute glint. He was alive. He was safe. I ran to him, throwing my arms around his neck, burying my face in his shoulder, inhaling his scent. The familiar scent of his expensive cologne, mingled with the acrid smell of smoke and the metallic tang of fresh blood, was intoxicating. The visceral scent of survival, of victory. He held me tightly, his body tense, then slowly, profoundly relaxing into my embrace. A sigh of relief escaping his lips. "It's over, Isabella," he murmured, his voice rough with exhaustion, with the raw aftermath of battle. "Marco is dealt with. The threat is gone. For good." I pulled back, tears streaming down my face, but a joyous, relieved smile now graced my lips, reflecting the rising sun. "Thank God, Angelo," I whispered, gently touching the cut on his cheek. A silent testament to his fight. "Are you all right? Are you hurt?" He smiled, a genuine, tired smile that reached his eyes, crinkling the corners. "I am now, Isabella. Now that I'm with you." He then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden bird, dark and smooth. This was Marco's. His lucky charm, he believed. It's said to bring protection. "I believe it belongs to you now. A reminder of the battles fought, of the peace we have earned together." I took the bird, its smooth wood warm in my hand. It was a strange gift, a tangible symbol of a brutal victory. Yet it felt like a profound testament to our shared journey, our intertwined fates. A promise of a future. Life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, albeit a new, redefined kind of normalcy. The shadows never entirely disappeared from Angelo's world, a reality we both accepted. But the immediate, crushing threat had receded. He remained a powerful figure, a force to be reckoned with, but with a renewed focus on legitimate enterprises, expanding Isabella's delights into a successful, thriving chain. Investing in local businesses, slowly, subtly shifting the balance of his empire, legitimizing his power. My patisserie thrived, a testament to my dreams and a powerful symbol of his unwavering support. Of our combined strength, my family continued to flourish, blissfully unaware of the true nature of the battles fought, the sacrifices made to protect their happiness, their peace. Sophia went off to college, bright-eyed and full of dreams, her future secured, limitless. My parents, their bakery thriving, bustling with customers, were finally able to enjoy their golden years, their lives rich with newfound peace, with contentment. And Angelo and I? We continued to build our life together, a life forged in the crucible of danger, of sacrifice, and of unexpected, profound love. Our bond was not a conventional one, not born of passion and societal expectations, but something deeper, something unbreakable. It was a bond built on sacrifice, on shared secrets, on unwavering loyalty, and on a profound, evolving understanding of each other's complexities, our darknesses and our lights. He remained the Mafia boss, capable of ruthless decisions, of brutal acts. But he was also the man who sketched my face with tenderness, who brought me tea in the rain, who protected me fiercely, who shared his deepest vulnerabilities in the darkness of the night. And I, the woman who married him to save her family, had found a love I never sought. A love that had transformed me irrevocably and completely, binding me to him in a way I never imagined. I had lost my heart, yes, but not to a monster. I had lost it to a man, a dangerous, flawed, complicated, and utterly captivating man, a man who, against all odds, had become my world. And in that loss, in that surrender, I had found a strength, a purpose, and a love that redefined everything I thought I knew about life and devotion. Our story was a testament to the unexpected places love can bloom, even in the darkest of shadows, even in the gilded cage of a Mafia boss, proving that sometimes the greatest treasures are found where you least expect them. And that's the captivating story of Isabella and Angelo, a tale of sacrifice, unexpected love, and the complex journey of the human heart, where the lines between good and evil, fear and devotion, become beautifully blurred. What did you think of Isabella's extraordinary choices and the love she found in the shadows? Let us know your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. And if you were enthralled by this story, please show your support by giving us a big thumbs up, sharing it with your friends and family, and most importantly, subscribing to our channel for more enthralling narratives like this one. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the depths of storytelling.